Hello and welcome to the February 24th edition of the Cluster API provider AWS Office Hours, a sub-project of both SIG Cluster Lifecycle and Cluster API. Please remember that this meeting is recorded and is subject to the Kubernetes community guidelines. So in general, please be excellent to one another. If you are attending live, please go ahead and add yourself to the attending list in the doc. And I can link that in the Zoom chat. And if you have any topics that you would like to bring up, please go ahead and add them to the agenda as well. To start with, we got a couple of PSAs. The first one is the Cluster API release for V1 Alpha 3 is nearing. And we are looking to start cutting RC releases for the AWS provider to allow for better testing and integration before the release. So part of that is I created a RC.0 milestone in GitHub. And when we get to the issue triage and grooming later, we're going to try to make sure that that's populated correctly and everything that we need that we want to try to get in before a release, preferably later this week, is in that milestone. All right, other than that, a reminder that if you haven't been to the main Cluster API meeting or seen the mailing list, we are having a meet and greet breakfast for Cluster API and KubeCon EU. There's an RSVP link in the doc, so if you would like to attend, please fill that out so that we can send you the location once we have that tied down and make sure that we have room for you. And if you haven't already received a Cluster API t-shirt, there's a link to a form to request one in the doc as well. All right. I don't believe anybody has any demos today. And any group topics for today? Nope.
Someone tells me this is going to be a quick meeting.
Maybe. All right, so let's jump into the issues then. Well, first I can go into the milestones. Here we have the 0.5.0 milestone, which we've already had open. Obviously, we are not shipping it 10 days ago, but I've also created this 0.5.0-rc.0 milestone that I plan on cutting a release on Friday unless there are any major blockers to doing so. And I've also added the 0.5.x milestone as well. And once we start going through some of these, if it's things that we'd like to get in during the 0.5 release series, we can bump stuff there that wouldn't necessarily be release blockers for 0.5.0. And with that, we should probably start with the outstanding PRs that we have. We have this one here for being able to specify AWS config alongside credentials. Have you had a chance to look at that yet, Nadir? Or?
No, I well, I briefly looked at it. I need to try it out and see what the side effects are, because it might be a significant UX change.
So I have experience with these environment variables from working on Valero many moons ago, and I don't think that we necessarily should require or default to requiring an AWS config file, because if you just have credentials, they can go into the .aws credentials file, and config is optional. So I think maybe we need some documentation around this, but I don't know that we're necessarily going to want this to be the way that we have everybody doing it, like out of the box.
Yeah, it depends how you read the docs. So I think technically the credentials file is deprecated and you should be using the config file now, but
Is it really?
So yeah, so but it's gonna changed the UX a bit, and we're trying to get ready for a V1 Alpha 3 release with all the cluster couple bits.
So it sounds like we
Do
probably
that
need
right
to
now?
bump this one to next then.
Maybe, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and put a hold on it too, I'd say.
All right. All right. Port EDE test automation from release 04. That feels more like a nice to have for me. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the 05X milestone.
Yeah, it timed out, basically. Ran out of time.
Yeah, and I know I haven't had a chance to look at the parallel EDE test stuff that I've been working on. So, all right, instances do not require an SSH key pair.
That was a redo of a previous one that got closed.
Yeah. All right.
You had a ask about doing a reverse conversion. That's why I've not touched it since.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest one. I think getting this change in would be a good thing before 0.5, but I don't necessarily know if we'll get it done before the milestone. Oh, not that one. Attempt to run the EDE test in parallel. This one is against 04. And we have the two.
I found
secrets
another bug in
managers.
those, so I need to address those before doing anything. So I've left a hold on them.
Do you think you'll have a chance to address that before
Friday?
Friday?
Yeah.
This is the one for Secret Index. All right, then I'll go ahead and I'll put this one in the RC then. All right, add instructions for existing AWS infrastructure. I believe that 0.41 has already been merged. And add events for AWS service failures. All right, I don't know if we'll get to this before Friday, but it'd be nice to have for the release. And add events for AWS service failures. Probably the same. So hopefully everything here except the IPv6 stuff will have a milestone now, and it does. All right.
So the events one, 1512, is targeting 0.4. I think we probably want that rebased and reset against master, right?
This one, oh, yep. Correct. Thank you. Then probably start with the issues that we have already in 0.50. All right, add a project roadmap document. I'll go ahead and I'll bump this one up because I can get to it this week. Audit Kappa code to generate events for all AWS calls if missing. I don't know if we'll get to that this week. And document what you get in a cluster, likely the same. All right. And we have 15 without any milestones. Go ahead and open all these. All right, broader CNI test coverage.
That was definitely for next, not for this.
All right. And I think it's safe to say that this would be important long term. All right, find a way to prevent overriding /config by EDE. And I think this is probably likely next as well. All right, documentation for testing.
Oh yeah, he had asked in Slack, like, I want to develop on the code base. How do I run tests?
Yeah.
I suggested that he file an issue because I thought it would be a good idea.
Yep. And I would agree. And I will go ahead and put this on the 050 milestone, and we'll try to get to it before then, but it's likely something that might get bumped if things get a little bit too hectic towards the release. Attempts to tag root device when it doesn't exist.
I think we fixed that. I don't know why it's not closed.
Yep.
I probably didn't label the fixed issue properly.
All right. Error handling of AWS Secrets Manager. This is what you're currently working on right now. So let me go ahead and credentials from secrets don't always work in an AWS container. Let's see. This isn't that's an imminent blocker, is it?
No, I think we can, if there is a bug that needs to be fixed, and I think that's partly what's been attempted with that shared config file, we can look at addressing it in a point release.
All right. Some AMIs are missing the AWS CLI tools, yes. So the problem here is that with the secret changes, some of the older AMIs that we built don't contain the AWS CLI tooling. So if you try to spin up a cluster from master right now, those would fail because the secrets are defaulted to on. So
would it make sense to rebuild them one by one as people complain, or do you want to try and do them all?
So Seth already identified the date at which we fix the issue and publish newer images. So it's basically just doing a query against AWS, against the account that holds them, for images that are older than a certain date.
Okay.
So it's actually not that bad, but I just haven't had the time to kind of spin up new images yet. And it doesn't seem to be too big of a blocker to people, but
We can just not list the old AMIs for V1 Alpha 3.
yeah, we can go that route as well.
Although I guess if you put in a version that resolves to one of the old ones on a lookup, that potentially still come through that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It would be really nice if we could just use Proud build images.
So we have an issue for that against the for the image builder repo, but it's just slow going. So I'll try to get this done in time for the 050 release. And enable SSM managed instance core policy.
I think it's totally appropriate to say that that's next.
Yeah.
Would be nice to do it at the beginning of the next cycle.
I thought it was super simple, but there's some weird WebSocket permissions that are needed.
Of course.
All right, an AWS account multi-tenancy using a single instance of the controller.
Definite next.
Yep. Support for EKS. I think that's a definite next. All right, fix, make, generate examples.
May not need it if we're going to have templates anyway for cluster castle, maybe.
Yeah. So in that case, let's go ahead and put this in the milestone. Need to reconcile this with the templates that we need to create for cluster couple. All right. Machine node ref is not getting assigned as the request to the load balancer is timing out. So I think this is related to trying to use an old AMI where the machine just isn't coming up.
Oh, I see I was commenting on that one, but I honestly don't remember it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my guess. I guess it could have been that, Jason, for 1530, or it could have been that we hit the 10K limit on secrets.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure when that was opened was right after we landed the secrets by default there, which would have immediately triggered the AWS CLI stuff, even if it didn't. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, one of the two.
One of the two. All right. And add docs for consuming existing AWS infrastructure. We went ahead and left this in the milestone. So cleaning up the AWS templates.
That was the next.
All right. Support cluster cuddle by implementing the provider contract.
That we need to do that for Friday, I think. So that we need to provide the cluster cuddle templates.
Oh, why am I going to closed? I don't know. All right, that leaves us 3 by Friday. The error handling, the cluster cuddle contract, the templates, and the provider roadmap. And 6 open before the 050 release. So I think we're in a relatively good state at this point, at least. All right. Anything else before we wrap up for the day? In that case, thank you all and see you all in 2 weeks.
So yeah.